The Russian invasion of Ukraine has triggered seismic changes in German policy, including plans for a massive expansion in military spending. The war has also exposed how weak a link the German military is in NATO. But is Europe ready for Germany to abandon its post-war reticence about the use of military force and to become Europe's most powerful military actor? 3 days after Russia attacked Ukraine, Chancellor Olaf Scholz stood in Parliament and announced the biggest rearmament program for his country since the end of the Cold War, vowing not only to increase the defense budget beyond the NATO target that Germany had failed to hit for years, but to invest 100 billion euros, 2 full years of military spending, to turn around years of underfunding of the German military. It has abandoned the vision of peace through interdependence with Russia by agreeing harsh sanctions, suspending Nord Stream 2, and promising to wean itself off Russian energy. It has broken with a key element of German post-war civilian power culture by sending arms to Ukraine. The 2% target could in theory take German annual defense spending to $80 billion, leapfrogging past Britain, France, India, and Russia to become the world's third largest defense spender. Such a transformation will not happen overnight. Germany's armed forces, much maligned as ill-equipped and under-resourced, will take years to upgrade to cutting-edge equipment and manpower. And German society's deeply embedded resistance to the use of force will not recede quickly either. But in time, growing military capability will come with growing pressure to wield it. In recent years, Germany has been labeled the reluctant hegemon, and with the departure of the UK, Germany now constitutes 25% of EU GDP, compared to France's 17%. According to the government's plan, the lion's share of the fund will go to the Air Force and will be used for new investments and purchases, including F-35 stealth fighter jets, Chinook transport helicopters, and Israeli Heron drones, as well as the Modernization Fund. Scholz also promised to spend more than 2% of Germany's gross domestic product on the military, a NATO goal it signed up to in 2014 but has never fulfilled. Berlin has proven the indispensable player enabling the EU to cope with successive crises over the euro, uncontrolled migration, and COVID-19. But it is a society that is in no small part due to its history ambivalent about the responsibility of preeminent leadership in European affairs. This is particularly the case in the military sphere. In multilateral military missions, Germany has tended to hand back. If German military expansion is to mean anything, Germans will have to become more comfortable using military power. Such a process would apparently be welcome to French President Emmanuel Macron, who has for years been promoting a vision of greater European defense capability. Skepticism about reliance on the United States and NATO has deep roots in France, but Macron's concerns were heightened by the Trump presidency. In a 2019 interview, Macron warned that NATO was becoming brain dead, questioning whether the United States could be relied upon to meet its Article 5 commitments to defend its allies, and stated that we should reassess the reality of what NATO is in the light of the commitment of the United States. Whilst such fears receded with the election of Biden, and NATO appears resurgent and indispensable in the face of the current crisis, this may be a temporary respite. Bookmakers have Trump as favorite to win re-election in 2024. We can only imagine how recent events would have panned out with Trump in the White House. Would the Baltic states be able to rely on the United States to defend every inch of NATO territory, as Biden committed to do? Would the America have pursued the same sanctions? And remember, Trump was impeached the first time following a phone call with Zelensky in which he linked military aid to Ukraine, opening an investigation into Joe Biden. For Macron and others who share his concerns, the transformation of European defense capability is an urgent task. At a summit of European leaders in Versailles on the 11th of March, he declared that we need to get organized at the European level to build these joint defense capabilities, adding later that we may have to go back on the dogmas we had for many years, the organizations or habits we had. A new European strategic compass presents a broad menu of tasks to strengthen European joint defense capabilities. But the politics of deploying these capabilities and their political and military effectiveness will remain to be seen, as will the role of Britain. German defense spending offers new prospects in terms of capabilities, but new doctrines will need to come with it at both national and European levels. And a look into the future of European defense cannot be separated from questions about the future of the EU itself. Smaller countries, particularly those in Central and Eastern Europe, could lean on Germany for strategic enablers, such as military airlift and reconnaissance capabilities. The EU is a hugely successful political project that has proven resilient through a series of recent crises. But Brexit proved that European integration is not an irreversible process. Euroscepticism is a long-term rising trend in France and Germany. In Germany, the increasing demands to shoulder the burden for European stability are one of the drivers of Eurosceptic resentment for those that want to put German interests first. The hard Eurosceptic, AfD, now appears to be a fixed part of the German political system. With around 10% of seats in the Bundestag, it is still marginal and shunned by other parties. But where will it stand in 10 or 20 years? According to Henry Kissinger's formulation, the historic German problem is that Germany has for much of history been neither too weak or too strong for the peace of Europe. The European Union's historic role of harnessing German power to European interests and binding France and Germany together will become more important than ever in the coming decades as US power recedes, and if Germany indeed develops into the continent's most potent military force. It seems clear that the German military will play an increased role and demand increased funding as the world struggles to grapple with the consequences of Putin's bellicosity. But the German military has given outside observers little reason for confidence in its ability to manage large sums of money. And Scholz's secrecy gives critics good reasons to doubt the transparency and democratic impulses of his government. Scholz, and with him, most Germans, seem to have recognized the change of times. Preparing for its consequences will require sustained leadership at all levels. But having tied his personal political fortunes to this overhaul, Scholz must succeed, for his own sake, for Germany, and for Europe.